Hey, welcome to Tell Us Something. Lake Nicolazzo is originally from Cape Cod. She moved to Missoula, Montana for the first time in 1995. She has only met one animal she didn't like. She enjoys good company, dance parties, sailing on Flathead Lake, fields of fresh powder, and cocktails on the beach with good friends. She lives on the north side of Missoula. Please welcome Blake Nicolazzo.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. When I first moved to Missoula in 1995, I immediately made the most amazing friends. I made friends who were adventurers and athletes and activists. And one of my friends decided to move to the Tetons for the summer, and another friend offered to take me in his plane down to Jackson for the weekend to visit Brandy. And the thought of being whisked away in a private plane to Jackson Hole for the weekend was very attractive. And so, of course, I agreed to go. And being from Cape Cod, when you're asked to go on somebody's plane, it's usually in-flight fancy bottled water and heated up bowls of nuts. And so I was really not prepared to show up and see a very rustic landing strip and a 1967 Cessna. So we did the pre-flight check together. In my mind, I'm like, don't you have people to do this for you? And don't judge me. And then I was handed a parachute and told to put it on for safety. So the flight was okay, and then up over the Pintlers, the turbulence began, and I was a wreck. My stomach was a wreck, my mind was a wreck, I was a wreck. Richard, the pilot, we'll call him, was also a wreck, and I knew this because he was actually praying out loud. So, anyway, we landed in Jackson. We made it. And hopefully being battered in a teeny plane over the Pintlers is a one-time experience. So we landed in Jackson, and the first night we were there, we decided to go on kind of an evening drive through the park close to the lodge where Brandy was working. And it was a full moon, and the stars were out, and we wanted to see, the Tetons at night. And shortly into the drive, Brandy stopped the car in the middle of the road because she saw a really big buffalo on the side of the road. So we pulled over, and she turned off the ignition, and we decided to just witness him as long as he would allow it in silence. And not only did he allow our presence, but he approached the car. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and my windows rolled down, and this ginormous thing, I'm an East Coast girl, we don't have buffalo. I'm used to deer, freaking out. They see a car, and they're like, ah! And they don't know where to go, and they could get hurt, you could get hurt, whatever. But this buffalo was so chill. And he walked up to the side of the car, and I noticed this huge black head and then the lighter brown body. And I then saw his eye and then his horn, and his head was next to my window. And I went back to his eye. And because you can only see one eye at a time, right? They have pretty broad heads. So in his eye, and with that connection, I found a gentle nature. And I was immediately in love. I just felt it. We feel things. And so shortly after that trip, I came back to Missoula, and I read an article about a really intense slaughter of over 1,000 buffalo outside of Yellowstone, and I was really confused about why that would happen, and I started asking questions. And I came to find out that this gentleman I had grown up on Cape Cod with was living in Montana and working for the Buffalo Field Campaign. And he very patiently described to me the issue because it's complex. And I kept learning more and more about the connection between the buffalo and the native people of America. They relied on each other in a really intense way. And I also learned that the herd of buffalo at one time was maybe about 40 million animals that spanned almost our entire nation. And I learned about the brutality in the early 1900s, late 1800s, that decimated that herd from that 40 million, let's call it, down to 23 individuals. And those animals were discovered in Pelican Valley, which is very deep in Yellowstone. So in learning about this, I really started to care about them. And then I made my way to the Buffalo Field Campaign headquarters, which is outside of West Yellowstone. It's on Hebgen Lake, and it's incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly rustic and incredibly squeaky. And there's a really funky group of people there. There's been over 4,000 volunteers from all over the world who have come through those doors to lend their passion and their talent and their time to this cause. And I'm so often struck by the passion of the people who are involved that I fall in love with them too. And I fall in love with the buffalo. It's this whole tribe, it's this whole movement. So spending time in the field is something that happens 365 days of the year at Buffalo Field Campaign. And in the morning, the very early morning, whether it's snowy or hot, patrols leave the camp and they go out and find the herd and they document everything that's happening that day on the front lines. And some days you see the tough stuff. And on other days you see the beautiful nature of what is the Buffalo Nation. These are families, and they are loyal, and they, for instance, in the winter, there'll be a group of animals trudging through really deep snow, and that's hard work for anyone who's ever done that themselves. And the tired leader will move over, and a new leader will take responsibility for breaking trail. And I just love that. I love that cooperation. In the springtime, you, as a witness, can see a mama giving birth, and you can see the first moments of a new life, of a new generation of the Buffalo Nation. And then sometimes in the open areas, when a large group of them is moving in the same direction, the thunder of their hooves on the ground is really scary at first, because am I in the way? If you are, you're in trouble. But it's poetic, and it's real, and it's what the ground is supposed to sound like. It's meant to be there. It's their birthright. So bring it back to camp, and everyone gathers, and this creaky old cabin is coming alive again with people stripping off their gear, and they're tired, and they're getting ready for a very well-earned, home-cooked meal. And you have your meal together, and then you sit around, and you talk about the day. And you share what your experience was, what you saw, and then you strategize about the next day of keeping your friends safe. And it's very powerful. You believe in a collective dream. You know that you're part of something, and you're not alone in that. And when you think about the animals and everything that they persevere through, it's a great example for all of us. If you've ever felt tired or bewildered or broken, you can think about these animals using their giant heads to wade through snow just to eat a meal. I mean, that's tough stuff. So if they can do it, you can do it. Keep going. So it's my self-help moment. So anyway, one of the things that activists do is you hold your victories really close, and you are so grateful for a victory in any level of activism that aligns with your values. And something that's happening today that I think is awesome is the destruction of the model around SeaWorld. There were so many activists for so long who called out the destructive nature of captive mammals, confined mammals. It's cruel. And then blackfish came along, and then there was this tipping point, and the world reacted, and that model, I guarantee you, is going away. And so we have this moment in activism where we're like, yeah, you guys won, woohoo, you're winning, go get them. But that moment hasn't happened yet for buffalo. I've been involved for 15 years, people have been involved for 17 years, and the tribes have been involved since the beginning of recorded time. So until that tipping point happens, we will stand strong with these buffalo in this collective dream of free roaming, wild buffalo. Woo. So to quickly loop back and close the story of that flight, right? So I had to fly back to Missoula in that godforsaken plane. And I didn't want to do it. So secretly I'm like, is there a bus? Is there a train? Should I hitchhike? What do I do? My answer came in a box of Dramamine. And I put the parachute on, we get in the plane, it's gorgeous, it's the Tetons, you're just like, and then we get into Yellowstone, and Richard, the pilot, is showing me the topography, and my door starts to rattle. And then the door, before I know what's happening, it flies open. And in midair, above Yellowstone, my door flew open. And so Richard looks over to me to like test my mental temperature and like, is she gonna lose it? But the Dramamine was helpful, and I was chill, I was calm, I was ready to listen. So I retrieved my seatbelt, which was banging on the underside of the plane. I got my parachute though, so I put the seatbelt on, and Richard tells me the plan. He's like, okay, and we're like losing altitude so quickly, and he's like, I'm gonna turn the plane on its side, the door's gonna bang down, you're gonna grab the latch, and you're gonna close it. And in this, it was our only choice, So in this foggy Dramamine-induced moment, I'm like having peaceful thoughts, and I thought, one, I have a parachute, so even if it goes wrong, I'm gonna be okay. And secondly, the view beneath me was this wide open field and a herd of buffalo, and I remember thinking so lovingly and peacefully how beautiful they were. So, long flight short, we made it back, I'm here. If my own nature had not been one to roam, I would never have come to Montana, and I would never have gotten in that plane, and maybe I never would have fallen in love with those shaggy beasts. But I did, and I am so proud to be part of a collective dream and part of a tribe of dreamers. And I know that for myself and for the buffalo, that wild and free to roam is the only way. Thanks.
Thank you again to all the storytellers, and thanks to you all for coming out to support them. Thanks to the Top Hat and the staff here who rocked it again. You guys are awesome. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Thanks again to the bookstore at the University of Montana, Fact and Fiction Books, Rockin' Rudy's, Haley Faust, and Zucity Apparel. Thanks again, everybody.